taking the shine off. I think if we would have been outside, we would have been hot. Like you're seeing like the sweat droplets forming.
Yeah, all right.
Oh, you got a book?
Yeah, dude, questions for you, bro.
Oh my God.
Not a lot, but because we're gonna riff, but some stuff.
No trick questions?
No, I never.
All right.
Is there anything you didn't want to talk about?
No.
All right.
I mean, I don't know. I don't know. Maybe. I don't know.
All right, bro. Thank you for taking time, man. I appreciate it.
Of course.
You're a super interesting dude. Louise and I met about 5-ish months ago as we were at the Green School. Brought our kids, and we become friends. So again, my guest, Louise Lopez, producer, editor, director, genius, if I would say so myself, rivaled Quentin Tarantino or anybody. So it's real unique. Thank you for being on the show.
Well, that's very, very kind of you to say. I think you just got my first name and last name is the only thing you can really put stock in. Everything else, I don't know.
Hey,
but thank you.
It's subjective, dude.
Okay, all right.
All right. Well, as I like to typically kick off shows, a little introduction. Thank you for being here. But I would love, because Luis has shared some of his past, and it's great. And he's a character. He's hilarious. Side job could be a comedian or take over full time. So, but I'd love for you to start like your past. So, Luis, living in Tijuana, Mexico. Describe to me the first time, and then we'll go from there to present day. But describe to me that first time coming across the border at 14 with on orders from your dad and parents. You're going to school in Imperial Beach. Across the border that first time at 14 years old.
So I grew up in Tijuana. I was born in Tijuana. And my parents wanted me to learn English, right, when I was young. And so they put me in preschool in a school in Chula Vista, right across the border. I started learning English at a young age. My only sort of academic schooling has been in the States, even though I grew up in Tijuana. So I'd cross the border back and forth every day.
Okay.
And so...
What was it like then, from what your memory of like going across? It seemed like then it was seamless, right? It was just real easy, the flow, or what?
Certainly much easier than now. Like it was, but I think, Tijuana, San Diego area was a fluid. There's a relationship there. You have people live here, people live there. Now, especially, you have a lot of Americans living in Tijuana just because the cost of living is so inexpensive that you could make money in San Diego but live over here.
Right.
And there's actually tons of infrastructure, like all these condos now that are being built for Americans. But yeah, it was pretty fluid. It's pretty lax. I had 2 aunts, my mom's sisters, that lived in San Diego, so I had cousins there. So it was very easy for me moving back and forth. But so I had gone to school since preschool. 1st grade, 2nd grade, 3rd grade. My mom would drive me in the morning, and another family we'd carpool with would pick us up. And so after about 10 years of my mom doing this, she was kind of tired of this drive because there was still a border wait, right? You still
how long was the average wait, or could it be real long sometimes?
It could be real long.
Yeah.
It could be long, but I would say on average like 20 minutes, 15, 20 minutes. Then sometimes it would grow and get longer. So when I was about 9th or 10th grade, my mom was done. She's like, been doing this for years. And so my dad, through my uncle who lived in Lopez, got me a fake driver's license that said I was 15. Because in Mexico, you have to be 15.
Yeah.
States was 16. So I got a fake driver's license that said I was 15. And so I had a 1981 Celica, drive that. I mean, I can't remember the first time I did, but I think I had gone across the border my whole life. It was such a normal thing that it wasn't like, oh my God, this is the first time. Yeah. I'd done it every single day forever. So when I jumped in the car, I don't remember. It was like my mom was. I think it was just me, and I think the funniest thing is like the border patrol agent, which you'd always either get a customs guy or a INS immigration guy. Sometimes and I mean he saw my passport. I'm sure he knew my age, and was just like, yeah. Go on, but I knew the roads, and So I mean, I don't remember the first time particularly, but I do remember it wasn't that big a deal.
Yeah. Do you think your parents wanting that for you was like help set you up to do what you're doing today, or? Definitely,
learning English,
Sure. Well, I mean, I think your accent is undetectable. Like where I feel like you've been in the States a while too, so it helped that from that young age of always being part of it. Your parents. I mean, and you spoke only Spanish. At home, yeah. So, I don't know, when you start preschool, year 4 when you're 4, so I was young. I don't remember learning
English. I remember being in preschool and just being, it was a lot to take in. But I think probably every kid, right? Like you're thrown into like these situations.
Okay. When did you first, so high school, Imperial Beach High School, right?
No.
Okay.
I went to Marion. It was a Catholic school.
Oh, okay, I see.
Yeah.
And what was that like, Catholic school growing up? And then I assume that's kind of what your background was in Tijuana?
My mom was Catholic, yeah. Okay. And so, I ended up at a Catholic school. It was good. It was fun, man. I always had a great time. I had some issues with religion classes. I think I was always didn't always all make sense, right? Like you would hear these things like, and you'd raise your hand like, wait, what? So I think eventually I got a pass. They were just like, you can go take art classes. Yeah. Which was fine by me. I was like, great, I'm not really interested in this. Didn't really sink in too much, right? It didn't make sense. It still doesn't. Like, a lot of those things, for me, personally.
Yeah. No, I get it. So where did the idea or, your thought of going into film school, correct?
Yeah.
What you did, like, did that start young, or did you have a fascination with movies or film or directing, anything like that?
Not really. I mean, I think I had the same probably experience with movies you probably had, right? Like you probably saw them and were like, probably blown away. I'm sure you've seen, I don't know, what movies do you remember like, we're like kind of like, man, that's cool.
It's like, growing up, I don't know, man.
Star Wars, Indiana Jones.
I would say that's a great
Back to the Future.
Yes.
These movies, they kind of spark like your imagination or whatever.
Yeah.
And so
I would say Avatar of the most recent of just the spark of imagination.
Yeah. But as a kid, I probably just had a similar, and I think it wasn't until I went to junior college at Grossmont College.
Yeah. Okay.
All right, so I went to
La Mesa.
Yeah. So I had finished high school, and I did really well in school. I was really sort of academically successful.
Yeah.
But I didn't know what I wanted to do. I don't know, and I think that a lot of kids have this, and I have a lot of sympathy for people because I think parents sometimes say, hey, you should know what you want to do, but I was.
Did you ever have any draws to do what your dad did?
Yeah, by default. So when I went to Grossmont and you had to sort of declare a major, I was like, I'll do biology and go to med school. My dad was a surgeon, so I thought like, not because I really wanted to do that, only because I didn't really want to do anything else either. So I'm like, I'll just do this. I was capable enough. And then I was at Grossmont College, and so I would take the trolley from the border to downtown and then take the trolley over to La Mesa and then take a bus. And I would often have to get there early because of the timing. And I would just hang out at the library. And I don't know, I just started reading. Like I liked movies, so I kind of was drawn to like the movie section. I started reading about movies, and then it was there that I realized like, oh, you can study this. Like before that, I had no idea that was even an option. Yeah. But then I was like, you can go to school and learn this and learn how to be a filmmaker. And then I think that's where it started. Okay. And then I started digging around, like, well, what are the film schools that are available? Which ones are the best ones? And I applied to SC and UCLA and NYU. And I got in all of them, and I thought, like, I'll go to USC. It's sort of George Lucas. We talked about Star Wars, right? So it was like George Lucas went there, and Robert Zemeckis. And
it's close to like it's a couple-hour drive up from Tijuana. So
not far. Yeah. And
And so got in, and so what year did you, freshman year of college, what was that?
Well, I started Grossmont College in 92.
Okay. Okay, gotcha.
And then I started SC. So I went 2 years to Grossmont College, and then I started SC. I started film school in 94.
Okay, gotcha. And then 2 years graduate from film school?
That's right.
Okay. What did you learn in film school that helped you or helped? What was like a culminating point, or was there a lot of them? Or good, what do you got?
I mean, for me, like, what I loved the most, when I was in Tijuana, I was an outlier, right? Like, there wasn't people who loved film. I mean, I'm sure there was. Yeah. But it wasn't part of my community. It wasn't like, my friends weren't, I was kind of, not that I was weird, but I was like, once I started getting into film, I didn't have like a peer group that was like about that. Yeah. I had a peer group that was about other things. And one of my favorite experiences going to SC was just being around other people who were into film and liked film and could stoke each other, right? Like I was like, wait, this is rad. Like I'm with other people who are interested in things I'm interested in. So developing those relationships was like really cool. Yeah. And not feeling like you're just kind of like, like
by yourself. Nobody else thinks. So
and so all of a sudden, I had a peer group, and I mean, to this day, I'm friends with like that film school. A lot of those friends, it's like 30 years later, more, whatever. Yeah, I'm still friends with them, and we work together.
Nice.
Yeah.
Cool. So you mentioned, again, this is public knowledge, that you're a sleepwalker. So
Oh, really?
do you still do that as a grown man?
That's a good one. That's a good one. I'll tell you what. No, the answer is no. And ever since I had kids, it kind of went away. And it used to be, yeah, that used to be, yeah. Ask Susan, my wife. I mean, I would have to tell people if I was going on a trip, if we were going somewhere, especially if we're staying in the same hotel room or something. I mean, not that we would do that, but you know, it's like, yeah, I would just. It's like intense dreams, right? It's like dreams that they're so intense, and then you start feeling like you're in them,
So
and
like out of Step Brothers, just.
Yeah, it's like you having this dream, it's whatever, house is on fire, and you start getting up, and then halfway through you realize like, oh, you're asleep. You're just like, it's a dream. Like,
well, I feel like there's a lot of people like when really creative, imaginative people have that. Like they just where they're in their dream, they're in this dream state that they, you know, it's like that mix between the two realities,
right?
Know, if you will, like with dream and then this, it's like they don't mesh up just right, or they do. Right? I don't know. It's wild.
I think I read somewhere. It's like there's some part of your brain that shuts down, sort of like your physical. You know, but you feel it sometimes, like, you know, when you're sleeping and you fall and you do that, right, like. But sometimes there's something in your brain that sort of shuts that down, and sometimes when that filter isn't, you start kind of acting it out, or
that's wild.
Yeah, that's funny. Yeah.
So since you mentioned Susan, so like let's talk about your first marriage. Then talk about that. We chatted about that, so it's a great story. And then, you know, getting into that, you could be a comic if you wanted to, but yeah, like tell us and like how you got to, like, honestly, I think of it as like the American dream, because and I think a lot of people think that way, where like America does hold this potential for so many people, and if you can figure it out, if you can navigate it, if you can contribute, again, dude, you're brilliant. And that you've been able to do things, but also you've worked hard. And I think it's depicted in the fact that you left your house, you crossed the border, and took like 3 trains and or a trolley and a bus to get somewhere. And I think that's fucking unique. I mean, how many, like, I don't know, I mean, are there lots of kids doing that today?
I think so.
You think so?
Yeah, I think so. And even when I was growing up in school, there's a lot of kids sort of crossing the border.
Well, I guess it's like the work, dude. Putting in that work, and I don't, not to say that I think there are too, but it's just like, it seems unique, and it seems like nobody's going to give anything to you, and you persevere. Not to take away that the kids doing it today, I'm sure, but I'm like, I think that's unique. Yeah,
I mean, I don't know how unique it is. I think a lot of these things are sort of a combination of, like, there's probably some desire, right? And there's opportunity. You know, there's sort of pathways that sort of present themselves that you can jump on, but sometimes other people don't have those. And I think there's friends that help, right? There's people that you know, I think in my journey, like, there's so many people. But that's a credit to, like, not to me. Yeah. That's a credit to, like, the people that I've met along the way that have helped out and been like, hey, dude, and that's a long list. Right, that's a long list of people.
That goes into something so everybody can realize is that, you know, Luis is really easy to get along with, and he's fun, and he's happy, and he brings value, and like, but that's kind of like you're talking about jobs you get. Even maybe, I don't know if you mentioned like Coachella, where you're like, well, like Luis is going to do this because it's like, one, you do a good job. Like I mentioned to you, like the bar, you know, the 3 pegs, the bar act. Can you do the job well? Do the admin game, where it's like when you do all 3 really well, then it's like opportunities open up, or is it luck, or what is it? And you work hard. So it's like that balance. I think it's a combination of that and more things, right? And so, and then, you know, I think you can sort of like armchair quarterback it and say, hey, this and this, and you can probably draw the right lines. But I think, you know, when you're young too, you're open to maybe more risk. There isn't much to lose, right? So you're open to things. Did you have this innate, but like, how did your dad approach it to you when he was like raising you to like going after things like that? Yeah, I mean, I think even sending me to the States to learn, it was a little maybe less traditional, right? So and I think my dad was a bit of a radical thinker. Okay. You know, he, which I was around a lot. I was used to maybe thinking too that was kind of that way. I was comfortable with it. I think when you're young and you're eager and you have dreams, right? Like, and you just kind of do what you think might get you there. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, sorry, the tangent, but go back into, this is about just before you moved to New York. right?
Yes. So first marriage, and we'll put marriage in quotations because it wasn't a real marriage. But and speaking of like people that have kind of who helped me, and like I said, it's a long list. And sidebar, like not to get into politics, I think people put Americans in different sort of categories. My personal experience is that Americans are amazing, generous, kind people. Like that's my experience, always. So I know sometimes politically people, but like my experience has always been really positive in helping me out. But yeah, so case in point is once I had graduated from film school, I was there on a student visa. I was a Mexican national, right? I was born in Mexico. I was a Mexican citizen. I had a visa. Once I finished school, you usually get 2 years of work study. But right after I graduated, I went to go live in Spain and go surf. Nice. So I kind of spent, and then I stayed. I stayed long enough that when I came back, I could no longer use the work study years. Okay. They're like, wait, where you been? You're done, guy. So I had to go back to Mexico. I went back to Mexico and back to Tijuana. But I had a film degree, right? I'd studied film. I had a film degree. And so I worked at like an independent film production company on like exploitation films like Bath of Blood, these kind of straight to video kind of films. But they were terrible, but it was fun. One of my jobs which would never happen in the US was like, well, you'd have many jobs, right? But one of them was making blanks. So I would take cartridges and I'd pliers and I'd pull off the slug and crimp it up and I would make blanks. Nice. But that was like one of my jobs, right? Like I'd make blanks over here and then carry the lights, and it was fun. Like it was fun. And then I had a job over at the studios where they made Titanic, and they were now making a movie called Deep Blue Sea. And through my friends from USC, they were able to get me a job as a shipping coordinator, which was basically paying off customs to get the right equipment into the studio. But I would get paid as a local Mexican worker, which was like not much, and it was and it really wasn't that fulfilling to be a shipping coordinator when I wanted to be a filmmaker. And so made my way back into the States, and I was living on couches in LA with my friends for far too long, but they were awesome and always willing to host and take care of me. And then one of my friends' wives, we had a mutual friend, and she's like, hey, there's this girl and she'll marry you to help you out, to kind of help you stay in the country. So I got in touch with her, and she was an old friend. She had gone to theater school at SC while I was in film school. We made a short film together. And she's like, yeah, I'll help you out. And she's like, but I'm not going to live in LA. I'm living in New York. And so we went. We had our marriage, our fake marriage in Las Vegas with all our friends, and took pictures. And then I went to go live in New York for a couple of years. And and I ended up working at a comedy club out there.
Yeah. I feel like that, and you mentioned it a little bit before, of like, because I love comedy clubs. Like we go in San Diego, there's like I'm forgetting the name. It bounces around, and I think that laughter is something that's unique to be able to get people to laugh. Like it's like this authentic energy that I love. Did that change you, help you, form you as you got to be around some incredible comedians?
Yeah, I think so. I think so. It's a funny thing, right? There's a whole just group of people that work at comedy clubs and waiters, and we see it all the time. Yeah. And so there's like this weird like snobbiness that develops, like because you're a waiter and you're the back and you're just like, yeah, that's not funny, right? Like because we were there, we've seen these guys so many times, and we see the ones that same. Right, the same bit, and you get all judgy because like you're like,
is he not gonna do something new?
Something new. Is it funny? And then you see the guys that are really good at it, man. They're really good, and it's just fascinating to watch. Yeah, it's fascinating to just see a lot of these guys, and also maybe develop like, what do I think is funny, right? Like. What kind of humor do I gravitate towards, right? And man, it was cool. It was a lot of fun.
Nice.
Again, have friends from like my waiter days there that I'm still in touch with.
Was there any one experience or comedian that like was just like had some experience or a bit that stuck with you to now? Anything come to mind?
Oh man, Mitch Hedberg. Do you know Mitch Hedberg?
Yes.
Yeah, Mitch was great, man.
Rest his soul. Yeah.
He was funny, dude. And I got to like hang out, and he took me to other clubs. So I'd be there hanging out, and he'd be like, hey, let's go to the Comedy Store. I'd never been. I'm like, Comedy Cellar. Cellar. But he wasn't Mitch Hedberg yet either. He was a really funny guy. Yeah. Louis C.K. used to do some really. At some point, Louis C.K. became kind of like more. Before he became like the weird sex stuff, he was became like a kind of more dad. But there was a time he just did weird stuff, really absurd, and it was really funny because it would. And again, so the waiters sit in the back. We used to love when like comedians were confrontational to the audience, or they would confuse them. because I don't know, maybe as waiters we also had like a relationship with the audience, like, you know, these are the people we have to serve. So we loved it when they were getting confronted or they were confused. So Louis C.K. would be a guy that would do that. David Tell had this really amazing relationship with the audience. Zach Galifianakis, amazing. Just it was amazing.
Cool. All right, so there for how long were you in New York?
2 years. I was there for 2 years, right before 2000.
Okay.
Yeah, because I remember coming back to LA for that.
And then so back to LA, and then is that where, tell us, like, getting into LA, and then I think at that point you're like, hey, I'm doing, you know, when did it shift from like kind of figuring some stuff out where you started making money from what you do now?
I, sort of swimmed around a bit, right? Like I think there must, even in New York, I did some PA work, right? So
okay, all right. So you're just doing all sorts of stuff.
Right. So production assistant. I come back. I think I was a production coordinator on some TV and Disney shows for TV, which is kind of like a admin job, right? And then it was right around the .com boom, thousands, early 2000s. There started to be a lot of influx of money into the internet, right? Like there was like the internet was going to be the next place for media to develop, and so there was all these companies that sort of appear in LA that are like .com companies, content companies, and so I landed a job at one of them that was, you know, could have been the next YouTube. There was no reason. I mean, but that race was on, and so there's a lot of sort of companies sort of vying for that role to be the next sort of place where your Netflix or whatever, your YouTubes. And so early on, I landed a job at one of these places, and I started doing editing, but it was kind of whatever they had in shop. And so I developed some skills at editing, and then I met a friend there who, once the company tanked, we were doing a project with David O. Russell. Do you know director David O. Russell? He did the film Three Kings.
Okay.
You've seen Three Kings?
Yes.
Love that movie.
Yes.
So, and he had done that film right around the time, and then we were doing a project, or that company was. So this company tanks, and my friend and I said, hey, let's pick it up. Let's pick up this client, or, you know. So we picked up that job, and then we decided we started our own little company. And we had a small company of two dudes, and we did like mostly motion graphics, which are main titles for shows, but which we thought was cool at the time, you know, designing main titles. And then this was also sort of like at the pickup of like reality television. Okay. So reality television starts taking off, and you have these big companies that are doing these shows, but they also have these huge think tanks where they're just throwing out ideas for the next big reality show. And so they do pitch projects. So like someone would have an idea, like we're gonna do a show called Tone Loc Babysitter, where Tone Loc goes and babysits, so we need a proof of concept. And so I would go shoot Tone Loc Babysitter show, and they would use that video as like a pitch material. I'm like, oh no, that sucks, that's a terrible idea. It's a dating show with this. And so I started doing those with my friend, and eventually through relationships at MTV, we got a job to go on tour with the Dixie Chicks. And what the band wanted was, again, this is at the nascent sort of internet, they wanted to put once a week, have like a video of them on tour. And that was like a crazy new idea, right? Like, that you would have a film crew traveling and shooting and posting it was a new idea. Of course, this is like now like standard, like, right? Like
just a bro.
Every musician has a dude all day. But at the time, this was 2002. This was like, oh, this is a cool thing. And it would be a pay thing. You go to the Dixie Chicks website, you pay $20 for the year, and one of the things you would get is these videos. And so, my buddy and I, so we go on tour, we get put on a tour bus, and I think we went to Europe first, so we toured Europe first with them, and then maybe we did a whole summer tour, and we would shoot. And we thought we'd just be doing these little videos like, hey, wardrobe department, right? Or here's a video, which we started doing, but this was 2003 when the Dixie Chicks were in England, and they said something about Bush that became like a crazy national story. And so we're in England and I'm there shooting. I'm the only, and it was also an era where people didn't have phones at concerts. This was still like no, I was the guy. And so I shot this, and we come back, especially, it started already while we were on tour, but when we come back to the States, it's crazy. There's protests, there's like, it's in the news, there's like record smashing part, and we're like, wait, what? And so, and we had all this footage of like all this going down and what happened afterwards, and because we were there, and the band at some point realized that it was valuable to have this footage beyond, hey, let's make these little short things that come out once a week. They're like, this is interesting, and credit to them for recognizing that and letting us keep shooting. And we were green though. We were young and we were shooting this, and I really wanted to make the film. Like, I can make this movie. Like let me do it. And they were like, we're gonna get like a more established filmmaker. So they brought in Michael Moore for a bit, who was kind of like the hot filmmaker at the time. Yeah. And then Michael Moore passed, and then eventually Barbara Koppel, who's an amazing filmmaker, Academy Award-winning filmmaker, Harlan County, USA.
Yes, I've seen it.
So she had done that film, and so she was brought on to make the film, and we worked with her to kind of help her shape it, since we had been, we were boots on the ground. But so that was like the first time documentary filmmaking presented itself.
Okay, wow.
And it became something, and I was able to develop some skill in shooting them and being around, and start learning the skill set that it takes, I think, to be an effective filmmaker, how to be around, how to build relationships, how to build rapport. So that was I think the first one.
So that was your first one of like before it happened, but then it was like it's kind of interesting, like it coalesced around you.
Yeah, we were talking before about like how things happen in life, right? Like, I don't know that we just always can will it. It's not like that was the opportunity at the time, and like as I was doing these, we were doing main titles or whatever, and this was a kind of thing that came up, and we're like, yeah, well, that sounds cool to go on tour, and we had the capacity where we were kind of like, I don't know about innovators, but we were like definitely early adopters of like having the camera gear developed into like, it was like mini DV. The cameras were small enough. You could edit on a laptop for the first time, like all this stuff. So we were tapped into how to do that, because we were nerdy and stuff, right? It was the first time it was kind of mobile. You could take that whole process on the road. The software was available, but all these things kind of like come into play that create an opportunity. And you're saying, I don't know that you kind of will it often. I know you. That's part of it, and your desire and your will. But it's kind of like these are the doors sometimes that present themselves. And
so, what year was that?
That was 2003.
Okay, so
right before the 2004 election.
Okay, so that's 20 years ago. Right?
Good math. So you get some tequila for doing that.
I'm out. See.
I know. Yes.
You're kind of difficult to find on IMDb just because there's a lot of Luis Lopez out there. So there's another one from Mexico, I think even exactly the same age, who's a director, editor.
Okay.
And
all right.
You guys should be bros.
Right. Yeah. I'll have to get in touch.
So that happened. That seemed to have obviously controversy, success, especially for you because you're just like, hey, I'm just the director. I'm just the editor. I'm the one who facilitated maybe the shootings. Did that kind of like start you into this editing, producing, directing role?
Absolutely. Yeah. It did. I think it threw me down the path of documentaries.
Okay. Sorry. Yeah, documentaries. Specifically.
Yeah. So having had some experience doing it, you build capacity, right? Like I've had some experience. I feel comfortable. I feel comfortable having a camera in my hand. I feel comfortable sort of technically doing it and editing. And then from there, we had this equipment. For some, the deal with the band or their management really was like they had bought all the equipment and they were going to keep it at the end, but they really had no interest in keeping any of it. They're huge. They're a huge band. Once the documentary had a life of its own, they weren't interested in like recouping the camera. But so we had it. My buddy Seth and I. So we had all this gear. We had all these.
So what was the next thing after that?
So I think the next big thing was we did a documentary called The King of Kong.
Okay. Yeah.
And which really was the bigger jumping off point, I think, for both of our careers. And that was film. Like we just had the equipment. We had the stuff, and our friend sort of had a connection to that story, and we sort of jumped in, and it was something. We still had our little company on the side that was doing things, but that was kind of a passion project, and that became a documentary that really resonated at that time in the documentary sort of space in the festival circuit, and then beyond that, and opened up a lot of more opportunities. People were like, "Oh, the guys that worked on that film."
Right.
Yeah.
What's drawn you to documentaries? Is it maybe over the past 21 so years? Like, what's drawn you to keep doing that style?
I mean, one, it's kind of the path that was opened up and made available. So there's a door, right?
Gotcha.
With the Dixie Chicks.
Yeah.
And then you develop a skill, right? Like the more you do it, you become proficient at it, right? Or you develop your methodology for it, right? Because we've been surfing, and I talked about like the more. Oh, yeah. You just have to do it, man. You do it, and you'll develop a knack for it. You'll develop a skill for it, right? Sure. And I think that's what happens with this too. You start doing, you start shooting, you start editing it, you start developing ideas around like why things work, why things don't work. And for me, it's storytelling, right? Like to me, I went to film school. I love movies. I love storytelling. Right. I love how that made me feel. I love how it took me to some place. And so this is just sort of like the, in the spectrum of filmmaking where I've been able to kind of show my storytelling. And that's because of the opportunities that have been presented, and I think I've sort of followed that path down that line. And so I mean, I've seen documentaries go through a lot of growth, a lot of change, being at it for 20 years, and I'm still doing them now. And streamers came along, your Netflix came along, your Amazons, your streamers, they changed the game a lot. And I surprisingly, like the attitude about documentaries, when we were young, they weren't cool. No one wanted to see nobody wanted to see a documentary, and to place now where like you ask people and they're like, oh, that's the first thing I look for, which is a trip. Like nobody ever cared about documentaries. Yeah,
well, I think life is stranger than fiction, and I think more people are aware of that.
Yeah,
I think.
I think you're absolutely right. But that changed. That it's very, in my mind, I remember the era when documentaries there wasn't much of a interest or cool factor at all, and somehow along with the streamers and people start being I can totally sit down and that's an option that I'm happy to tune into. That was not existent in 2002.
Yeah, I think I probably didn't watch a lot of documentaries until I met my wife, and then even her brother, and then we and maybe his fiance, his wife at the time, we all watched this documentary called SOM, S-O-M, like short for sommelier.
Okay, yeah.
I don't know if you've seen that one or not. But
yeah, I haven't, but I remember that one,
and it was like, at first I'm like, let's get some wine, drink. And I'm like, I was in the Marine Corps. And then, about 10 minutes in, I'm like, oh my God, how did he know where that wine came from?
Yeah.
But I've, since then, it's just been a lot of, and I think another one I mentioned to you, Touching the Void, which is it's a documentary, but also, I forgot how you call it, but a movie. So like live action of what these guys went through, and as these guys are real guys who are depicting and telling the story of what happened. And that one, they do it incredibly well, where you're like, they did the story really fucking good. And so it's like you're up on that mountain with them.
Yeah.
And you're just like, holy shit. Yeah. And you're feeling that adrenaline, that life or death situation.
Yeah. I mean, again, like credit to the story. Telling, right? Like it's
exactly. Because you have to do it, right? Otherwise it's...
Oh yeah, it can be terrible. And there's plenty of examples of it. Yeah. But when it's done right? Like it's as good. Like you get taken away into either the characters or the situation or the excitement. And having done especially like true crime, it's often it's all about how the information is doled out and what you withhold and what you tell at the right time. And and you're familiar doing this, right? Like there's some people who have that gift of storytelling, and it's not just how they talk, it's how they process something, where they start, where they take, right? Like some people have it innately, or have developed it. Yeah, and it's amazing.
So what would you say has been the most difficult story that you've had to kind of tell in your documentary career?
Well, the true crime ones definitely leave you with like an icky feeling, right? Like you're often dealing with people, the situation that's most tragic in their lives. In my case, or one that I worked on, or I've worked on two where a daughter was murdered, brutally murdered, and one you're dealing with in the assets themselves that you're dealing with. So you have court documents and you have testimonies, and then you have photographs, like you have crimes that are horrible, right? And that you're coming into work, like you sit down and you got to look at these photographs. It's heavy. And then two, you're having to interview these people and have them revisit these painful parts of their lives, and sometimes it feels like you're doing it to make something, right? Maybe to share their story, maybe to bring some justice to a situation, which is the case. But still, it's hard sometimes to separate yourself from like, man, I'm making this person go back to this situation and retell it, and it's painful, and so I can package it up, and Netflix can give me some money so some people can watch it on TV. So sometimes that feels that's hard.
Yeah.
And you know, you just have to kind of keep your mind in maybe the more important parts, or the more, you know, if there's an injustice, right? Maybe you're helping shine a light.
Right.
In which case we did. This is a project called The Innocent Man for Netflix, which was based on a John Grisham novel, his only nonfiction novel. But still, it's just heavy being in that space. You kind of like have to develop a gallows humor as well, you know?
Well, that's kind of how like the Marine Corps works, where you're always talking about death all the time. And because the first thing we talk about in the Marine Corps is like your contingency plan, meaning like, hey, if everybody dies, you know, or most people die, this is what you do, and you have that, you know, desensitization.
Yeah, or you have to joke about it a little bit, make it light, because otherwise it's, dude, this is too heavy. It's it's a tragedy, like, and you're dealing in tragedy. Exactly. You know, that has that particular sort of, I think, aspect to it.
What about working with, you know, people for the documentary? Like, what's that process like? How many bosses do you have?
Oh man, I mean, it varies. It varies. I think every documentary, it's almost its own thing, its own hierarchies and politics and roles. You know, I think maybe broadly defined, like I'm the director, I'm the editor, but that role from project to project can be different based on who's involved.
Yeah. So you have a lot of bosses then, it seems like. If you're the head editor and you're gonna because you're answering to all these different people. If there's a singular person, they have a say, and then they have a manager, and then there's another, you know, it seems like there could be a lot of...
It can be. So let's say right now, like, so we're talking about the trend of documentaries, right?
Yeah.
And so my last 3 documentaries have all been sort of celebrity docs.
Okay.
Right. So I'm working on a Carol G doc, which is she's a Colombian pop star singer, right? And then I did Andy Kaufman, comedian, and then I did Andrew Dice Clay before that, right? And so in the trajectory of like where documentary has gone, and because of streaming, because of where money is, where eyeballs go, so you end up working on sort of these celebrity projects, which come with a lot more sort of like, so now you have probably the artist involved or a comedian, you have their management, you have the streamer, like if Netflix, in this case Netflix is doing the Carol G doc, they're involved, you're gonna have a production company, yes, you have a lot of sort of players, which doesn't necessarily make this a better product. In fact, I might argue that makes it a worse product. When compared to like when I was sort of coming up and stuff, like they were just sort of like 2 knuckleheads going out and shooting stuff, but it was awesome. Like it was cool, and it didn't have you didn't have like as much sort of bureaucracy. It reflected that. Like it was able to go places that were maybe not as explored and subcultures, and you're also like, you know, you're having conversations. It's not like I got a huge crew and I got Netflix and I got this and that. Kind of like where the industry kind of is right now, and you know, a lot of the filmmakers, or I think a lot of the talent is there because that's where the money is and that's where the project. So you do deal with a lot of layers of people who have a vested interest, right? Like if I'm sure Carol G was interested in how she's portrayed, and that it's not
exactly. If it's about her, then like she's gonna watch it and want to make me look good, bro.
Or not good, but like, yeah, whatever it is, like her agenda, right? Like, what's her agenda? And like, and then Netflix is like, well, we want to get eyeballs. We want to get as many people like clicking on this thing,
so
like a Mike Tyson fight.
Oh my God.
Right? They're about clicks. That's their business, right? And so, pros and cons.
Kind of, what's next on the docket, documentary-wise for you? Coachella, you mentioned.
Yeah, I'll do Coachella. I mean, being here, like I had wanted to take time off, and just to kind of enjoy this experience, being here in Bali, and the Carol G sort of project extended over that, and so I've been doing that. But yeah, hope to take a little break, and then
I think that break will be awesome, dude.
Yeah.
Are you just going solo? No kids? No wife? Back to Coachella for LA?
Probably.
That sounds great.
Yeah.
And that would be like a week of shooting like that?
No, so I told you what we do, right? Which is
briefly.
Explain? Should I agree?
Yeah. You explain.
So
are you scared your wife's gonna drink some more tequila?
Yeah, I don't want to get in trouble. She's gonna come home like, what are you doing?
This is work.
Like, this is work?
Yeah. We get to drink.
My favorite kind of work. So if you go, a couple years ago, I had helped work on the Coachella documentary. It was a documentary that sort of was a retrospective about the first 20 years of Coachella. Yeah. Golden Voice, the folks that sort of run the festival, really liked the presentation of the film, and they wanted to incorporate some of those elements into their live stream. And so my friend Chris was brought on to sort of make this happen. And the short of it is that, so when you're watching Coachella on YouTube, now you can switch between stages, right? So you can go like, I'm gonna go to main stage to Yuma, and you can switch channels. Yeah. But what happens with that is now that, let's say you switch over to Sahara stage, there's usually about 30 minutes between acts. So there's nothing going on. There's just like an empty, sort of roadies, moving boxes. And so people don't tune out. One of the things we do is we make little short films that play during that middle period.
Okay.
And so there'll be interviews with other artists at the festival.
And so you're going to go more like not real time, or kind of like almost semi-real time?
It's semi-real time. So what we do is we build a couple of packages ahead of time.
Gotcha.
And then we build a whole bunch of them, they're real time.
Okay, nice.
And so I get to run around in a golf cart with the crew and shoot.
Epic.
It's the best. And the guys we do it with are so much fun. Yeah. But I get to do what you do. I mean, I basically just sit and ask questions and.
Dude, I love that.
Yeah.
So yeah, well, where would you find that? Like Coachella.com, and then you can find the link.
No, I think it's on YouTube. It's a YouTube thing. Right. I mean, I'm sure if you go to YouTube and put Coachella in.
Yeah, okay, cool. It seems like you've made your life, in a way, right? Or however it's coalesced to be fucking cool. Where you're doing things like Coachella, right? Or even this last gig you did. And we've chatted before that, because it's timing, right? Because documentary, because if you're editing, your time is focused in on that thing until it's done, right? The contract or however it works. And so you're doing all like these things where like you love it. You're doing it. And like this, like Coachella is because you're a good editor and people like you. And so you get these opportunities that are like, I can't believe I'm getting paid to do this. So how would you tell somebody else, how do they manifest that? Like, what would you say to that? Because it's like, it's not like there's an art to it. You can't just say, oh, well, this fucking happened, because I know you now a little bit. Yeah. I think, look, we were talking earlier about film school, right? And I think you build relationships and you're going to find people with similar interests, right? Yeah. So I went there, I found people with similar interests in film. You find people with similar interest in music, right? And you bond on that. And it becomes a real thing. Like if we like tequila, we're gonna sit and we're gonna have this conversation. We're gonna have another bottle another time because we bond on a topic, let's say. And I think, you water your passions, right? Like if you love this, we have like my niece that moved in with us when she was 17 or 18, and she lived with our family, and she loves music, man. She works at the music venue. She takes photos, and she's in that world, right? She's in that world, and bands know who she is because she's at the shows and she's taking pictures, and then they ask her, hey, can you come on our tour? But I think you pursue your passions. If you like filmmaking, go to LA, go to New York, hang out with filmmakers. And if you love, find that culture, and get involved. I would say, right? Like and build those relationships. Like again, we talked about it earlier, but like I owe my success or my path through to the relationships I've made. And people have always been like, hey, come on, dude, like, hey, you want to come do this, or and that opens up opportunities. But I think maybe they recognize like my passion as well, right? And so, I mean, that's what I might suggest. I think that you have like, it's not that it's necessarily unique, but it's just that you have that your disposition allows for opportunities, I believe, where it's happy, fun, always engaging. And again, that's another quality that's unique, and that goes into my kind of next question, because I think it forms your philosophical operating system. And so I'd like to maybe, if you could dig down and maybe give us like, what is that, your philosophical operating system that allows, I believe, these doors to be open because, like you do your job well, you're fun to be around, it's like you're competent, and you've kind of had these things, but it goes a little deeper, and like if you could elaborate on that. Sure. All right. I mean, I guess I might liken it to, who, all things being equal, right? Like, let's say sort of in either like talent or capacity, there's another factor, which is, I mean, I think we were talking the other day, who would you want to spend if you were in a submarine, right? Like, and there might be even someone who's more competent at the job, but you prefer to have someone who's going to make it
pleasant and stuff.
Yeah.
And yeah, I do think that there's value. I think I was sharing a story about this cyclist I met, and he was a professional cyclist, but not super top tier, sort of like more of a mid-level, but he was sought after by all the best cyclists as a training companion, because these guys have to spend 6 hours every day sort of riding up and down the mountains in the off-season training, and he was sought after because of his attitude, because they loved having him. Having a guy there that was not just funny, but also sort of he could sort of be philosophical, or he could be sort of funny and observational, and it made training go by easier, right? You got to put, and if you're Lance Armstrong, and you enjoying your training, you're going to succeed, right? And for him and them, it's like, well, I need this guy. Yeah. I need this guy because he makes me want to train. And that was a value he brought that was beyond sort of cycling, right? It has nothing to do with cycling. And I think that happens also in work environments where you have to sit with somebody and you want someone who makes the job fun or interesting and anything. Like it's easy to kind of like, and you see, when attitudes are off, it sinks ships quick. Oh. It's like and it takes one bad apple. I mean, in the military, I'm sure it's really quick to, some ideas and some this, that, and it's like, oh yeah. And so if you can kind of manage that with I mean, I think there's a name for it, like these hires. There's a hire, like...
We're just having charisma and reciprocal. I think what I've found that you do really well of like, listen, we were out surfing the other day, and I thought we'd caught a wave in, and we were like random one, whatever. And then we were paddling out, and there was some chick, it was me, you, and there was just some chick who maybe she almost hit you. And then we were paddling back out, and then she kind of looked like, like her first day. And then you just looked over, and you're like, hey, how you doing? Like you just started that conversation. I was just thinking in my mind, I'm like, fucking Louise making conversation. He's never going to see this motherfucker again in his life. But yet in that moment, you're like, how are you? You good? What are you doing? How long are you out here for? Blah, blah, blah. Like just that conversation, and literally made her fucking day. And then she kind of went off to her, and like we went over. That style of chatting with people is unique, because there's like, I want to be quiet and like don't talk to me, But it's like, that's what I'm saying, is like that change. That's a dynamic shifting ability, like a superpower.
Right.
Yeah,
Do
you even remember that conversation?
I do. Yeah.
But I thought that was like, that's kind of like what it is, dude. So you're like the cycling guy, and we're going to work on that because we got to figure out a call sign.
Sure. But I think so for me, like what part of my journey in surfing is realizing that, yeah, I like surfing, that it's fun, but I also like just sitting out there like talking to you. That's just as fun to me. Yeah. Like watching the sunrise, and talking with somebody out in the ocean. That's cool too, man. Like as cool as, then we catch some waves and that's fun, but that's like, whatever, 15 seconds, whatever, 20 seconds. But, talking, and I think, and we're social creatures, I think, right? We're social creatures. We like to connect. And I think when we connect, it feels like cool, like, hey, but I think that's everybody. Yeah. And I think maybe sometimes, certainly I understand some people have some fears, anxiety, and I know what that feels like too. I like it. I enjoy it. Like, I enjoy connecting and talking.
Yeah, it's like, it's obvious, and I think that's what makes you, certainly like a good at your job too. Because if you enjoy connecting, talking, and I think you enjoy like storytelling, because it's like because then you can connect to the audience.
Right.
So it's the same thing. It's like you can connect the humanity, I think, to what this person is or whatever or the situation. Then you have that humanity in you, and then you have the ability to share it, so it like connects. And I think like that's the key.
Yeah.
So, many movies and documentaries.
Yeah.
It's the same thing.
And I think everyone has their own sort of fingerprint on what that is, right? On what's worth communicating or how to storytell. Yeah, but I think, I don't know, maybe not for every time someone's been cool to me. Someone's probably flipped me off too, right? Whatever.
That's true.
But thank you. That's very nice of you to say.
Well, it's just the truth. So, all right. So next is, you've chatted about music a little bit, but then you also have mentioned, I feel like your love of music as well, and I similarly enjoy music in the sense that I don't have a particular favorite genre. I love everything. If you look at my playlist, it goes from Mozart to gangster rap to country to techno. I mean, it bounces around everywhere. It's just like, how does this song make me feel? Good? Check.
Great.
And so what is that, music for you? Like, how would you describe it?
Same as you. Like, I think there's, it's like there's music for different emotions, for different car rides, for different, but yeah. I mean, music. I mean, it's one of those things. Like, who doesn't like it, right?
How do you think of it when you're making, editing, and you're obviously probably putting music in different scenes and things like that, or parts of the movie?
Yeah. I mean, that's a great question. I think we all have different relationships with sort of either songs, and it happens. Like, you'll be watching a movie and you hear the song, you're like, oh, that's perfect, right? Like, and whether it captures an era or a feeling or an emotion. And I mean, a lot of it's trial and error, right? A lot of it's like, let's say you're building a scene and you're kind of thinking of the right tone, the right emotion, and you bring something in, it's like, it's not quite right. Or this part is okay, but this other part doesn't work real well. And I think it's trial and error. Yeah. And it's inevitable that you bring your own taste, right? Like, that feels right. That feels like, or sometimes you can't get it quite right, but you can approximate it. Sometimes we do like temp music, and then we have like a composer come in, and then you can tell them like, this is kind of like the vibe, but could it be more this and this and this, and then hopefully you can dial that in. Yeah. But yeah.
So, we'll kind of go to the next question is, so maybe, I don't know if it's your all-time favorite movie, but American movie.
Yes.
Why is that? Why do you like that? Because again, that's on your website. That's your first movie that you have listed.
Does it say they're not in any particular order?
It doesn't. You didn't say
so
that,
so you're like, that's number one.
Yeah, I mean,
American movie. All right. It's a great movie.
I don't know if it's your favorite, but like, why is that one right there? Like, why?
I mean, I think.
Why do you like that?
I mean, I do love that movie, and I think it's. So again, when we talk about the spectrum of where kind of documentaries are now, and kind of where they were, that's definitely a documentary that feels like it's made where you get access, like intimate access to someone's life, and it feels authentic and unvarnished, and it feels like that's what it is. And I think I can relate to the main character. He's a filmmaker. I'm a filmmaker, and he's passionate. In circumstances that are kind of, he's not in Hollywood, he's not in LA, he's out in the middle of, Minnesota or something. Yeah. And he's roping in his knucklehead friends to make movies, which I know what that's like. And, like I was saying in Tijuana, like I was an outlier. He feels like he's an outlier in that space. But I think the filmmaking just feels like honest to that situation. And the more you sort of work in documentaries, you kind of start getting a feel for what resonates as sort of genuine or honest or authentic, and that feels that way. And the rapport between the filmmaker and the subject is really good, and it's funny. And it's heartwarming too. It's like a good slice of humanity. Especially in working often as an editor, these things are often augmented, right? Like the amount of times I get notes like, make it more this, you have a situation, and they really and it's sort of the fallout of reality television, right? Is now like this notion that you just make it like sadder, make it more, they really want to just whatever to amplify things. And you can just, and there's a place where it feels okay and it feels authentic, and then there's a place where it just feels, you're like, just come on. like it's no longer sort of like about people like, they're crying, like make him, make
him sadder. Is there a knob for that?
Right, like they want a knob, just make it sad, make it feel that, which, and then it just you, and if you were to watch it, you'd be like, that kind of doesn't ring really true. And they bring in this sort of music that kind of sort of helps that along. But that, I think, does a really good job of being honest. Yeah. To the film and to the situation and the humor. It's great. Yeah, love it.
Cool. What is your most overrated movie that you, not knowing that you did part of, but like just in general?
Oh, in general?
In general. Anything come to mind? Because again, you maybe whatever. Think of a couple, but I feel like you have such good movie knowledge.
Yeah. It's overrated.
I mean, do anything come to mind, or is like, do you?
I mean, I'd have to think about it.
Do you hate one, like these motherfuckers, or something? Anything? Any like shitty movie that did really well, or but never did good, or like?
I think the truth is that I'm at the point and I'll turn them off, so I won't watch them. And, I can't think of any off the top of my head that.
You know how what I found is that's funny you say that. It's like as I'll watch the first season or two of season of a show, and then at some point I'm just like, it doesn't have it anymore.
Yeah.
It lost whatever
Yeah.
it had in the beginning, and now they're like just like washing standard like bullshit into it. You know, Andrew Dice, you're right, just making some shit up in the back and throw it against the wall.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and that's not uncommon. Like I've worked on series where, you know, it's like a doc series and you kind of take the material and you're like, you go back to, I won't name any particular streamers, but like, and you say, hey, we got like 4 solid episodes, and like, no, we need 6. That's the truth of it. And the people you're working with, there's payouts. If you were to make it 4, they would make less money, and if you make it 6, like, well, we get paid, and so it's like 6 it is.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, all right, so here comes some filler. You know, that's not uncommon.
Yeah. Oh, you know what comes to mind is the first one is 24. The show.
Okay.
I think my wife mentioned that, and we started watching it. You know, I think there's 24 episodes. Each episode's an hour, right, or something. You know. And then it was like first one, and you're like, oh my, whoa, babe, this is fucking good. And then it would be like these episodes where it'd be, even though the Jack Bauer, this daughter's hot, I'm like, really, the whole episode? We're just like, what's happening here? Like, and I'm like, and I remember like that's what comes to mind is like the filler episode. I'm like, listen, I'm out. I can't do this. I want to see just straight through.
Right. Yeah. I don't know.
If it pops up, just interrupt me.
Yeah. I'll ask you a question. Because one of my favorite things about making docs is that I often get thrown into a space, a subculture, and I get to like ask questions like to, you know, people who are like experts in certain spaces, right? Like, and which is like so cool. Like you're like, and you get a pass, right? They're like, I know you don't know anything about, you know, I don't know, like I did a 3D printing, you know, and it was technology and startups. I'm like, I don't know anything. Cool. And the people who you're talking to who have, you know, founded all these startups or whatever, they're happy to be like, yeah, man, I'll talk to you, answer your questions. And so you get to learn. You get to like spend time and learn and ask and be around a space, and like you're just hanging out, and it's really cool. I mean, and that's something you get to do, right? Like you get to kind of talk to people in different sort of areas of expertise, and what's that like? Well,
I love it, dude. I think like you or your work it's not work anymore when you just love what you do. When you just like love to have authentic conversations like this. You know, it's like as we chatted and became friends, I'm like, you know, like it's, you know, when you have rapport, it makes it super easy. And then when you're trying to like suck information out of somebody, you know, like it's just tougher. You know?
And how do you do that? You have different experiences with different types of people.
Yeah, you know, as I feel like I could just ask you this question. I have some questions, but to a degree, I like to leave it open-ended. I'm not here to gotcha. I think the most important part of this conversation is being authentic, and that goes into why I think the why do this, to have authentic conversations, is that there's an epidemic of veterans and first responders. It's 40 of them approximately commit suicide a day. And I think that in our world needs to have more authentic conversations. And rather than being like, like I think that was great. It's like 4 solid episodes. Like we need 6, so just put, you know, fluffer, right? But it's like, it's just bullshit. Like, no, it's not real. And I'm like, that's what I want, the real stuff. And I think that goes into this, like when there is somebody who, you know, I'm sure you've experienced this, where it's like, okay, this is gonna be a little more difficult. And I don't want to ruffle feathers or like, you know, but I've had conversations where I'm just like, where they don't have anything else to tell me, but I have to keep asking, well, how did that mean? You know, well, it just did. And I'm like, what did that mean to you? Did you feel, you know, I'm like, I don't want to, like, because I can easily, like, elicit a response for them almost, but I'm trying to ask them, and I don't want to, like, piss them off, or, because I want them to be happy and reciprocal, but it's interesting of, like, where you, to this fine line, and I'm sure you've maybe experienced it more, where you're like, hey, give me that, not that it's like, Kelly mentioned it, you know, to me because of her job, she talks about very, you know, intimate things. But people want to hear authentic stuff. But also it's like, hey, don't share the secret of whatever experience, but it's more like, how did it make you feel? Did you recover from it? Like, how did you improve yourself? And then even goes to a question that I ask everybody is that you've had a lot of success, but what about your failures? People want to hear a failure of somebody who's successful, and sometimes just to be like, yeah, I'm glad they failed. But I think on the other side is to be like, hey, if you want to have success, there's failure with it as well in equal measure. And so that's the part where I want to like still have that good rapport with the person. But I'm like, man, you can't just say, yep, didn't work out that time, but good, like 5 words. And I'm like, no, like, well, how did that make you feel? Like, share your failure with, because it's like, I'm not here to bash you. I'm not here to like tell a story that you feel embarrassed about, but it's like, but that's what people would want to listen to. It's that authentic humanity that's wrapped up in this balance of success and failure and trauma and brilliance and love and light, but also it's like there's a deep darkness, as you kind of mentioned before in some of those documentaries, where you're like, whoa, this is maybe even evil, and you have to like balance it out with the light. Right. But yeah, it's like continuing to elicit authenticity without making somebody upset.
Have you had experience where you had to be confrontational?
No, not yet. No, because I think this is a kind of interesting, and I've never. So we'll see how. I never shared this with anybody just because it's never come up. But since you asked this, you can say you do a good job too, bro.
You got to be authentic too. Go two-way street.
Is that I different times, and even in Bali here, I was chatting with a buddy who I met through this networking group that I joined right as I was about to kick off doing this podcast. And we're just chatting, and like he was talking about his stuff, and he's like, Blake, you do a really good job of making people feel being able to be vulnerable in front of you, like to you. And I'm like, oh, wow. Well, thank you for sharing that. Like I didn't, like I've never thought that way before, or like that was a part of me, but that was that was more of some affirmation where I was like, I don't know. I feel like I'm still trying to digest that.
Yeah.
Because he was sharing, again, in the conversation we were having, he's like, well, I haven't said this before to anybody. And then like, all right, he kept sharing vulnerable things. And I was kind of like, okay, I was just taking it. But then afterwards, he had that insight to be like, dude, you do that. That's a gift or something like that. And I'm like, oh, well, fuck, dude, thank you. Like, I think that's similar to you. And I think that's the part that's, again, back to you, is like, that's a gift. It's like, hey, you're able to be vulnerable. And then is like,
but it's not only a gift. It's something that like, I think comes with like experience. Like the more you do it,
right,
the more you get comfortable, the more you start seeing like, hey, when I approach it this way, like that, it's like you again, when we're back to surfing, you do it over and over and over and over again. You start developing your methodology. I don't mean like, oh, it's a trick. It's like you develop your
operating system,
your philosophy of how of your approach of like how do I approach this, right? How do I, because I think in documentaries, and especially you end up interviewing so many people, and you're trying to get to these places,
right?
And I think in a format where it's like, hey, I just want to hear about that. but sometimes you want to get
right.
And it's like we need to get here. A hard place that I want to take you, and then might have to do a little confrontation. But I mean, it's worth exploring. It's worth bringing into the repertoire, into the Blake Fisher repertoire. Sometimes I don't know. But there's comfortable. Right. There's trust because you're comfortable and we're okay. And then there's also some there's tough places.
I believe that. And I have another buddy, a friend of mine from the Marine Corps I interviewed, where we talked about like vulnerability in the Marine Corps. And I'm like, that is when like a leader, in my opinion, shares, like his vulnerability with his troops, his Marines. Very poor leadership in the Marine Corps from my experience. And I'm like, none of them did this, where it's like, hey, if you're vulnerable with your Marines and the people that work for you, and like, not like, I'm not just like, hey, I wet my bed at night, not like that.
Yeah.
I mean, in the sense it's like, hey man, I'm like, I don't do this well and this as well. Like I need help with this. And I'm like, I'm doing my best here. And like, I have all of these things. I get fucking stressed out too. Here are my faults, but I'm doing the best I can because every single one of us have these. And when a leader does that, then your Marines are like, yes sir, they'll die for you.
Right.
And that's a shitload of responsibility.
Right.
And it's like so many people don't get that.
Right.
And because they know that I would do the same for them.
Right.
And it's like reciprocal, and it's no different, maybe different context in an interview when you're like, when you have, hey, I'm just a dude here sitting, nothing special, like a bullet to the head's gonna kill me just as quick to you, whatever. But yeah, like that goes into my question for you is like, what is your, superpower? Have you ever thought of that for yourself?
We'll get that in a second, but just to touch back on your last point, but it's just because it came to mind. Like I have similar experience with parenting. Same thing. Like if you fuck up, you're not like, I'm the parent. My bad. I'm sorry. I forgot. I didn't. Right. Like that. That I think also furnishes respect and like humanity. Yeah. You fess up. Hey, if you mess up, you can't just be like, oh, I'm the fucking parent. I'm perfect. Sorry, I forgot. Didn't do that. My bad. Right. Like which kind of like it's something I'm experiencing. Sort of like, hey, just own up. If you mess up,
right.
Your kids, you don't have to.
Right.
Act like I'm perfect. I'm this. I know
because I feel like that then sets them up for failure.
Yeah.
When you're that way, because they think that's like, okay, then you just do whatever the fuck you want. There's no like where it's like, and they see that because like they're almost a mirror,
right?
In a lot of ways.
Or you're in denial. You don't know what's going on, right? Like clearly, no. All right, sorry. Your question.
Superpower. What's your superpower, man?
For what?
Life.
I would say enjoying it. I think in general, if you look at the world, it can be pretty depressing place, right? There's a lot of bad shit going on always, right? Like, so a comedian I remember saying, like, if you were to stick your head in the ocean and you could hear, it would just be screaming, right? Like, they're just animals eating each other, dying. Like, that's the reality, right? Like, and I think that's kind of like the reality of the world or universe. It's just dog eat dog, and things are just like, in general, entropy, everything's sort of dissolving and falling apart. And like, but if you can look at it and find some joy in there, I mean, that's all we get, right? Like, and it's, we have kids, we have families, we're here in this new country. There's a lot to get overwhelmed by, but if you can kind of just take it and find the joy somewhere, I mean, easier said than done, of course, but yeah, for the most part, kind of always find that, and it's, that might be it. I don't know.
All right, so what would your call sign to be? If you had to pick a call sign for yourself, again, you didn't just see.
Wait, can I hear your superpower first?
Sure. I'm a scary judge of character.
A scary judge of character.
So you've seen like Al Pacino in Devil's Advocate?
Yes, a long time ago. Is that the one where like he's the devil?
Yeah.
Keanu Reeves is in it?
Yeah.
like what, 1997 or something?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
And
he's the devil.
So.
And he hires a lawyer.
In essence, but it's just. Do you want me to tell you?
Yeah, because I don't remember.
It's his son.
Okay, Keanu Reeves is his son.
But it's
who's
like
a lawyer?
It's like the prodigal son, but in reverse.
Okay.
Because you have the innocent son comes and it's the devil's tempting him. But that's not it's more the gist is that I think I have, again, I don't know anything. I think I have a really good understanding of human nature, in the sense that, there's a part of like, nonverbal cues, in what people say.
Right.
But then there's the other side of just like aura, energy of like, and smell even. You're just like all of it. And I've been, honed it maybe.
Tuned
to understand what people are telling me without them telling me. And I think that because in that character Al Pacino plays, it's like there's the scene on the subway that I think is like, I just think it's such an interesting scene that when I originally watched it, I was like, movie fiction, bullshit, right? Just in movie. And it's where he's sitting, him and Keanu get on the subway in New York, and they're talking, and then Al's just looking at these two like Latino guys, like I don't know where they're from, South America, Central America somewhere, but they're sitting talking Spanish, and Al Pacino's just looking at one guy and is just like smiling. And then the guy's like, "Puto, what are you fucking looking at? I'll fucking cut you." And he's like, "Oh," and he just smiles, and he's just like, Al Pacino's just like in the zone, like, and then he then later says, it's like, "Hey, your wife is having sex with this other guy right now, in your apartment number." It tells the number and this and that, and he's like, "What?" Like, and then they get off the train, and I was like, that scene is just like, movie fiction, and I feel like in later in my life I've It's like, oh, that's not, I don't know. It's like, it's not necessarily fiction of what information is available. You know, it's like in that scene is maybe, you know, that's a movie scene.
Yeah.
But it's just, it's more so of like, what can you deduce from, you know, hearing, listening, being by somebody? And I feel like that's been something that I've, you know, again, that question was asked to me in like 2016 by a friend of mine who's a Navy SEAL. And he's just like, Blake, what's your superpower? And I'm like, what the fuck is this? Like, and then as I, you know, in a similar way, he's like, you know, you got something. Because, you know, I think and a lot of military guys getting out of the, you know, whatever branch or whatever they're doing, and they're kind of like trying to figure out what they want to do again when they grow up.
Yeah.
And they're like, you know, they're really, some of them, you know, like have incredible expertise at doing things, but it's like, hey, your business development, you just need to pick up the phone and make 100 calls a day, bitch. Do it, right? And you're like, I'm the baddest motherfucker alive. It's like, cool, make those phone calls, bro. Yeah, so it was more of like defining almost who you are now, like, right? Your ego and whatever you had, if you tie it to whatever you did, it really doesn't matter. Like, it doesn't matter if you can kill anybody and fly planes and shit.
Yeah.
You gotta make money.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So like, I thought that was a super unique question, or like, that's interesting. Because I believe that everybody has some unique, I know it.
Right.
Has a unique ability if they you know, in there.
I think people have all of them.
Well, yeah. It's
I mean, certainly not some physical capacity.
Well, yeah, it's whatever, man. However they would, like, it's there. Like, there's something. Everybody is special and unique. It has something like that. I don't know what it is.
Yeah.
You know, my son Brecken, he watched this show called Hunter x Hunter. It's anime.
Okay.
And so he was like watching it, but it was like either rated, I don't know, like above his age. And I'm like, no, you're not watching that. And he's like, Dad, you know, so I watched it with him when he was younger. And, you know, so it's really fucking violent. You know, but we watched it together. I forgot, he's 14 now, so I forget if it's like 10 or 11, but yeah, you know, fuck it. And so we watched it together, but like but in the show, it's like everybody has this ability and these unique talents or abilities. And I thought, and I was just, as we watched it together, I was like, that is no different, you know, than our reality right now.
Yeah.
And I think that everybody has these something, whatever it is.
For sure.
And if somebody wants to like develop it, it's, you know, as you're saying, of like, you know, water that grass, water the talent, water the passion that you get it. You reap the rewards of that.
Yeah.
But yeah, Scared is a character. I think that's just, but it's also the same thing honed, like, and thought of, and why, you know, how, you know, it's like, how could that scene in that movie that's great be a reality? And now, as I've, you know, however long since I saw that in college, maybe, you're like, oh, okay, there's something there. It's unique, you know, there's something. Yeah.
So sort of someone who feels like a scary judge of character. Do you, in your experience, or like, and across the board, not just interviewing people, would you say that people are generally good or not? I
don't think it's binary. I think their good intentions pave the road to hell. You know, where it's like, you see, I did an interview, you know, podcast where it was just like, I'm not gonna air it, but it was just like, this was like, I didn't get the vibe, it wasn't authentic to me. I'm like, no fucking way. Because it was like lots and lots of good intentions, but no depth and authenticity, you know? Like, where it's like, I was trying to pull it, but I think that, I want to say that they're good, but then our world is filled with like the documentary that I just kind of read about, but you enjoyed. What was the one called?
Act of Killing?
The Act of Killing.
Yeah.
It was about, you know, Indonesia, and like however many thousands of people were like just random. I don't know how he worked. It's just like, but the guy Oppenheimer that he interviewed, where there was no remorse, man.
Oh yeah.
And it was like, you know, as you said, it was like, yep, it was like they were kind of just sweeping up the floor or torturing somebody to death. There's no difference in their heartbeat, probably. You know, it's like, it was so, because it's so common. I don't know, like, I think what comes to mind is like harmony. It's like, where if you're programmed that our world is finite and that it's a zero-sum game, then that's how everybody's gonna fucking operate. Resources are scarce, and you're gonna fight for it, that's how, you know, and even, you know, when you think of like evolution, everything is like, you know, kill or be killed, right? For like everything, where it's like, I don't think it's like that. I think it's more of a epigenetic style of like, hey, if your environment is positive, right, you're gonna, then it's gonna be, you're gonna build from that. And I think that if you're given that information from birth, where it's like you have this incredible, loving, sweet environment, where you're like, then you're gonna probably be a loving, sweet person.
Yeah.
I don't know where I'm going with that, bro.
Yeah, no.
Like
It doesn't matter. But it reminds me too, like I had this idea, like, and doesn't have to be in. We could just part of the conversation.
All in, bro.
But like you often have like college age or college educated people sort of politically vote in a particular way, right?
Yeah.
And I think it's like they've been, when you go to college, like it's almost like this little utopia, right?
Right.
Where if you have a health problem, well, you go to health center. It doesn't cost you anything. It's already paid. You just go there, right?
Yeah.
You could probably have the meal plan. You want food, you just go to the meal plan. You want you want library, it's a little utopia, right? And you've lived it, because if you went to college, you probably lived it, and you probably have in your mind like this can work. Why can't we have this everywhere, right? And so you have that particular sort of, I think maybe. It's just a thing, not a theory based on anything, but you've seen it. Like, hey, if you have all these needs all taken care of, and you don't have to worry about them, and you can, like, why can't the world be like that, right? Like, why can't we? And how do you create that world? And I'm not, and it gets complicated. It gets complicated politically, but I think you as college educated have seen that, to some extent. Like, I've seen that kind of work.
Yeah. Well, I think it goes into like there's like this. I feel like our world is broken up into it's like in binary in a sense, like where it's like a good, evil, Republican, Democrat, capitalist, socialist. Where it's like, hey man, you got two options, and so then you can like fracture the minds of everybody. Where it's like, and then it goes, where you have like this controlled opposition or the illusion of choice. In my opinion, like, I thought. And that's all bullshit. There's like an infinite choices.
Right.
Truly,
yeah.
right? You know this too. It's like we're like your path. It's like fucking infinite. Our life in the world, and the 8 to 9 billion people here. It's like and certainly living in Bali, where you just have. And I've seen this here. How about this? Where the Balinese and now Christians that have been here for a while. It's like the Balinese and Christian. It's seamless.
Right.
Where they're like, hey, I'm Christian, but Balinese. So you have Shiva, Buddha, like you got like 10 different statues and a cross.
Yeah.
And like, they're all here.
Right.
And it's like there you go.
Right. Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah. Right.
Where it's not like where you're just like, oh no, you're going to hell.
It's this. It's this way.
Right. Where it's like you see this blend here, and I think as I chatted with another friend here, he was, he's kind of a pastor, and he was just like, I came here and there's like an exorcism, and then went to some people's homes, and there's like all of these statues and a cross. So they're Christian as well. And you're like, like for most evangelical Christian U.S., they're just like, if they, they're like,
right. Yeah, that wouldn't work.
Right.
Yeah.
It's like it doesn't work.
No, I think it's the same way with like, so your kids are here and they're like being exposed to new language, right? So and I mean, I don't know if we talked about this, but it's like if you have one language, right? Like this is a glass, right? It's a fucking glass. But if you know two languages, it's a glass, but it's also a vaso, and it can be three things, it can be four things, and it's not binary. It's not, things are many things, right? Like, and if you can wrap your head around, and you exposing your kids to being like, it can be, it's not just this and that.
That's such a simple but brilliant example for when you want to talk about like linguistics and like kids, where like your kids grew up with two languages, then they learn something else. And so it's like, then that idea of the world is binary is already out for them.
At least it plants a seed. Like, it's not just in some way linguistically there's a lot. But I think there's huge value, right? Like in everything, in ideologies, because the truth is that things are probably at some spectrum sort of, and they're not even fixed. They probably drift and they moved and like. Yeah. What is right? What is the left?
I saw Dance Moms on there too, bro.
All right, I'm gonna go to the bathroom. We'll do Dance Moms in a second.
That's one of those I've actually watched.
That's
with
good.
Kelly.
Dance Moms. That's a good one. Do you know who Nardwar is?
Yes.
You're like pulling Nardwar shit on me right now.
Fuck, dude, that guy.
He's the best, right?
I just put something good. Yeah, it's funny. I've watched some of his stuff and
Yeah?
I know Snoop Dogg loves him.
Like now all artists love him.
Okay, yeah. Now.
It took a long time. for everyone to come around to his style.
Dude, it was like I felt like it was cringy. It was tough to watch because even for me, I am empathetic. Like, and I'm like feeling into that. Like, he's gonna get murdered. Like,
Yeah.
You know, he's asking some weird kind of. I get it. Like, I'm like, oh, dude, it's either gonna punch him. I think he's probably gotten punched a bunch. Or, you know,
I'm sure. But have you ever seen like how he like really finds these like really deep questions like dance moms? It would be a Nardwuar question. Dude, that's a deep cut right there.
Well, you put it out there for me, you know? Like, what do we do?
Dance moms.
Dude, like, I've watched that, and Kelly's had it on, and I'm like, babe, what the fuck are you doing? Like, cause, you know, I'm like,
Yeah.
huh? And then I'm like, motherfucker, dude. But it's this weird juxtaposition of this insane lady.
Yeah.
But also that hey, do you want to be successful in this and do this? And so they're just like, we'll do it. And I don't know, man. It's like, in some ways you're like, well, she is really, some ways she fails spectacularly. But in other ways, she's like incredible success.
Right.
And it's like, oh my God, dude, fuck.
Yeah, I think I put dance moms on there because I think it was probably during the pandemic. You know, so we're all like locked down at home, and my girls would start put on the show, and so
I think it was probably my girls too.
Yeah. So your kids are putting on it, and like you know what? It's what they're watching, and I sat there and I watched it with them. It's something we did together, right? It was a together thing, and we watched Dance Moms. And I'm like, at some point, I'm like, fuck it, like I'm gonna Dance Moms girls, and they were stoked. And I'm like, I was like, you know, like I'm documentaries. I'm, you know, like, but it's something we did together. They watched it, and my dad was really into wines, right? He's like a big wine connoisseur, and you know, sort of high-end wines. And him and his buddies would get together once a week, try wines, but they would also save money so they could taste like $600 bottles of wine. But they would save over months, right? And they'd buy it and they'd share it and taste it. And so my dad was a big wine drinker, and so I asked him. I'm like, you know, I was younger. I was like, hey, Dad, you know, I didn't know anything about. I still don't know anything about wines. I was like, what makes a good wine? And he's like, number one, the wine you have, right? Which is like,
What's that?
The wine you have is the best one, and that's like Dance Moms is to me. That's the one we had because they enjoyed it, and it was something, you know, it was like a communal family experience with like a ridiculous reality show. But you know what? I won't forget that. Like for months we watched. What was the other one? We watched My Hero Academia. You know that one? So it was like Dance Moms and My Hero Academia was like whatever for that year. Every night,
That's with the guy with the big yellow head.
Yeah.
Oh my God, yeah, kid,
So,
my kid, same.
so yeah, so like Dance Moms.
There's some like but so I had those like with my son. Like we watched what's the one? God, there's like we watched it again. And he's like anime.
Yeah.
So we watched Attack on Titan. We most recently watched.
All right, so I was gonna, but it's too violent for my kids, right?
Yeah, you can't do it.
Yeah, that's what I heard. Like my buddy was like, dude, they're good.
Your oldest is
13.
So I just hold off as long as you can.
Yeah.
There's God, it'll come to me in a sec, dude. I'm like, fuck. I watched a few just because it was like.
You may not be into them, but your kid is, and that's something you can share.
That's exactly why I did it. Like, and it was like I enjoyed it too.
Then you jump in, and you get in, and you're like, yeah.
Yeah. So Brecken and I, there's one.
Anyway, that's a great show. If a show can do that. Get your family together. You watch it. You know, Dance Moms.
You have a really legitimate excuse. Okay.
But yeah, I watch it with my kids, and like, it's ridiculous, and like, it's terrible television. When my wife watches like terrible television, I come in, ask her, like, I judge. My face is like scaringly judge face comes on. I'm just like, what are you doing with your life? We could be watching something, but anyway, Dance Moms keeps me grounded.
No.
Have a good time with your family, whatever. They like it.
Hell yeah. Yeah, I agree. So, you know, I didn't ask you this, and we kind of tapped around it in so many ways, but, you know, what would you say is the relationship between luck and skill as you've seen it during your life so far?
The relationship, I mean, it's a good question. I don't know. I feel like my life, like, it has a lot of luck in it. A lot of luck. Skill. Yeah, and maybe it's a more of a philosophical thing to think like, you know, that I drove something. Like I'm not as comfortable with that idea personally, right? And I don't know that it's true. I don't know that you can necessarily will. I mean, in some cases maybe you can, but others you can't. And I think luck just has like. there's opportunities, there's situations, the people you meet, the parents you have, the kids you have, the personalities they have. I think they're beyond your control. I think most things, I guess, maybe to kind of are beyond your control. Most things are beyond, like you can't, it's not as much of a like niche Superman kind of guy, like you can will it and say and be, and if you're saying this and you could,
You're skillful at your job that you've done because you've been doing it for a long time, that kind of the same thing, and you kind of worked on things. And
but I'm kind of lucky because
so that's what I'm saying. You had to do a good job. So you're like the skill and luck. Where does that intersect?
Right. I think you can sort of invest in the things you think might be of value. Will they be of value to anyone else? Maybe. Maybe if you're lucky, they might be of value.
You love what you do.
Yeah, I love what I do. I love what I do. And like I said, I've developed a methodology for kind of how I think things kind of are work or efficient or are effective, that some other people think so too. It could very well go the other way,
Well, I mean, because it's like, think about it as like, so you did the first 03.
Yeah.
Right, did that. Hey, people like that. And it's like, it's like, boom, boom. It kept rolling along, and like, I like this, right? I love this, and it just rolls.
Right.
And so you had the skill, so it's that combo of skill and luck.
That's what you said.
Well, I don't know. I'm just kind of saying.
I think I think we can commit to like doing things and making things, and then you kind of can put them out there, and if you're lucky,
right?
It might resonate.
You could say that you love doing it.
Sure.
When you're
doesn't mean
you're getting up, fucking gonna make this.
Yeah, there's like endorphin hits and dopamine hits that hit when you're feeling it, but doesn't mean it necessarily will resonate with other people, and I think that's luck, man. Like, I think you can choose a path, and
my thought is that it does. Like, if you're doing it right, you have built a skill set around it.
Yeah.
And then you love doing it, right?
Yeah.
You're on the track, and because you're doing it out of love, that's it. I mean,
but I can imagine there's a lot of people that do the same thing and don't do well and aren't successful.
But you're skillful. But you blended this skill into like this balance of like, hey, I love what I'm doing, and then even though, as you said before, it's like it could be real shitty sometimes, but it's like you have this ability. And I know this about you already, so you don't even have to say it, but you have an ability to like, polish that turd. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Where it's like make it like, whoop, make it turn it into a W. Yeah. I see for you have an incredible ability to do that, and I think that's what makes you a good editor. Because regardless of if they're a shitty person or it's a shitty idea, it's a shitty documentary, you're gonna make that shit be beautiful because you love it, and you're pouring your love and your humanity into it.
There's a bit of ego. I remember being in group, I did this TV show, like Undrafted. Did you ever read this TV show? It was an NFL show where basically there were guys that didn't make the draft, but they're right on the edge, man. They're like, and so they're undrafted and they're still trying to make it into the league in the NFL.
Yeah.
And they do. A lot of guys do go undrafted and then become successful. Few and far between. But that was like a situation where there's like multiple editors. Like there's like 6 other dudes, and so you have meetings, right? Like and there'd be a scene that came up, and you're kind of dipping up, like who's going to do this, who's going to do that. And I remember thinking when these things come up, sometimes you don't want the hard ones, because that's like you can drop the ball. There's some kind of.
Hey, is there a cool guy? Let me get him first, please.
Yeah, there's like slam dunks, that's an easy scene,
Yeah.
And then there'd be scenes no one would want, and I think like Kobe or Michael, like, do you want the ball in the fourth quarter? I'm sure like in the military too. Are you the guy that's like yeah, no, I'm out, or do you want to be like, no, I'm it's fourth quarter. 12 seconds left. Like, give me the ball, and that's ego, right? Like that's like I can do that. I don't mind raising my hand because I don't mind failing either. Like I'll be like I'll miss it, but I'll also try. And I think that's more ego, right? Like being able to step into a situation.
No, I don't agree with that.
You don't agree?
No. So just see, like from my experience, is that like in the Marine Corps I was a little bit of a contrarian, and I knew where my talent lied, where how good I was.
Yeah.
And I had no qualms about that because I know that how the plane operated. It was like whoever was like, I'm the best and like I got it, and then I'm like, they're gonna die. Fucking idiot, And so it's like knowing that though, knowing what you don't know.
Yeah.
And like that is, but also it's like, if you're saying I can give it a shot and I don't get to die, but I'm gonna like put my love and effort and every part of my being into that. And I feel that, and that's what you're doing. You know?
Well, but maybe what I'm getting at is that being risk averse, right? Or
Sure.
like I'll do it. I'll do
yeah,
it. Like, hey, who wants to do this scene? And you can see the others. Yeah, that's a dead end, man. It'd really be the worst scene. Like this, on this NFL show, and like the worst character, and hey, we need someone to step up and like everyone's like, yeah, man, that's it. Like, I'm gonna look bad because it's a dud, and you're like, I'm gonna take the dud, and like I'm gonna
kill it.
Right, but it's also like me, maybe being a little risk averse as well, being like, you know what, fuck it, like who cares? Who cares if?
Well, I think I love that.
Do a terrible
I feel
job.
like that's my thing. Of the Rick Rubin's thing is like, hey, if you're doing what you love, then that's an offering to God. And now that as our discussion's going, it's like that's that balance though. It's like, right, because there's lots of people that like, I love what I'm doing, but they're not making any money. They're like, parents are paying their mortgage, whatever, right?
Yeah.
But it's like balance of, can you do all of those things? Can you be like, hey, I'm up in the ethereal plane, but like, you got to pay the mortgage, bro. You got to make the bills. I got kids and that stuff. It's because that's where the skill and this ultimate reality right here is important, and so it's a balance. So it's an interesting balance, like, which obviously you're doing well. I mean,
I don't know. I mean, I think sometimes about like idea, like everyone who made it never gave up. Right.
Persistency.
They never gave up.
Yeah.
Whatever, musician, filmmaker, I never gave up. But it doesn't mean that everyone that never gave up makes it.
No.
Right? So I don't know what the correlation is. Like, but because there's still people, well, if I don't never give up, I'm going to make it. No, there's no correlation there.
Yeah. I've been given gifts. I've also worked incredibly hard, and I've like managed it. And I think like your beautiful family and things, and like honestly, of just being able to be here in Bali too, and right to like turn everything, figure everything out to like be here is a big deal.
Yeah.
Change your whole fucking life to move across the world. It is a big, and so it's like that privilege to maybe a degree, I don't know, but it's more, it's like, man, I get that, but it's like the effort.
Yeah.
It's like, I think it's a Herculean effort that we planned. I mean, I don't know about you, but like I moved almost all my shit out of my house to storage to sell it, and then I moved all back in, and I'm like almost broke my back before I got, you know what I mean? Like I'm similar, like all of the things you have to, like, psychologically work out. But again, that goes into the background of like, when you're good, so you're good. You're good at shit. You're skillful.
Right. But it's also like maybe not risk averse, but like managing your fear. Like you can manage man, it's scary, right?
Yeah.
But I can manage. I'm going to take that fear. I can manage that fear and say like, hey man, I'm going to try. I could fall on my face. I could fall flat on my face.
Where did that first come from of managing your fear? Like where does that come from?
I probably the earliest instance probably of like being sent to a different country. I didn't know the language. I do have memories of just being like, and
what are all these motherfuckers saying?
What is this? It's a whole different place, and like, and I would say until 5th grade,
quiet, like you're
super shy, like right, like,
very so funny, like
because the whole world was so overwhelming. It was, I'm just watching it, right? I can remember having that feeling as a kid, like you're just watching the whole world, like parties, like dude, I would just like, I'm good, man. I'll stand over here and just watch it all, And it took a while for me to kind of feel comfortable, like. It was overwhelming. It was a lot going on in the world.
So,
but I think at some point you like small risks, small fears, and then you can start hurdling a little more. Yeah.
So what would you say your superpower is?
I thought I answered that.
What in that you then encapsulate it?
I think
simply
finding joy in as much as you can.
Okay.
Because I don't think it's readily. The world that doesn't give it to you. But if you make a choice to kind of like, you know what?
Well, I think I agree. Because I think it's there. I think it's a balance. Like, if you want to look at the horrors of the world, they're there.
Never ending, right?
But if you want to look at the joy, they're also there in equal part.
Right.
If you want to, like, think of it that way.
Yeah. And I don't know if it's a delusion part of it, and maybe there isn't. That's okay. Because I do think overall it's you know, a lot not to be happy about, right? There's plenty.
Yes.
And so if you can find that and just tap into that and ride that, like, I think that might be my superpower, being able to just go there, tap in there, you know, knowing that everything else is it's easy to kind of fall into that.
All right, well, what about a kind of finishing off, since we're kind of a little bit.
What do you mean? We still have like a...
Oh, well then we're going for another 2 hours.
Yeah.
If you had, so in typical military, you know, aviation.
I have an answer to the other question. I thought about that too.
Good.
Go ahead. Go. Future aviation.
No, this one. No,
aviation.
This is going to call as a call sign.
Yeah, that's the same one. I was going to give you that one.
Yeah.
Go
So
ahead.
do you have a call sign?
Yeah, but ask your question first.
All right. Well, I would just to give everybody context. So you know, obviously Zen and call signs, and so you know, in the military, you don't get to pick your call sign, pretty much. And so you're only given a call sign to, you know, whatever you get. It's like from when you're dumb or do something stupid.
Yeah, great. I love that.
But this show's different, bro. And so everybody gets to kind of come up with their own call sign. So what do you have?
All right, so I'm gonna stick with the dumb and stupid because I want to stay like in line with the military. It's the only time I'll ever say that.
Yeah,
but also, I'm gonna do it now. When I was in my 20s, I was in a very dumb band called Carne Asada. I wore my Carne Asada shirt at Bambapalooza. Don't look that up.
No, I'm just like writing it down.
Yeah, you go ahead and look it up. It's embarrassing. It was a terrible mariachi punk band, and we were on tour.
Mariachi punk band. Did you have a bass?
We had a big bajon.
Okay, bad.
Our bassist, Joey, was the bassist. And we were on the 2004 Warped Tour.
Nice.
Toured on that. And Carne Asada, there was, how many of us? 5 of us in the band. And we had stupid names that we gave each other. And my name in Carne Asada was Dirty Sanchez. So my call sign will be Dirty Sanchez. And I found a barbershop here in Canggu called Dirty Sanchez. Which is where I get my hair cut. They do a terrible job, clearly.
Dude, epic end to a incredible episode. So thank you for your time, brother.
Yeah, of course.
Cheers.
Cheers to you. I can't wait to see more of these.
Oh, thank you.